Right Place, Wrong Person is 1 year old today, so let's talk about it. Right Place, Wrong Person was my favorite album of 2024. I felt so compelled by the album that it drove me to write an essay about it. And a few months later, I uploaded that essay to YouTube. These were monumental steps for me. I had basically renounced writing. I felt jaded because I had 2 unpublished books that had been rejected so many times that I lost count of how many writing contests I had applied to. I had to accept failure. But when I heard Right Place, Wrong Person, wow, that album meant so much to me. It had me writing an essay and a music review after years of thinking of myself as a failed poet. RPWP came into my life, and the beauty and the heartbreak of it was so monumental that it had me writing again. It was a different medium. It was a different format. It wasn't me trying to prove my own lyrical value with language. It was me experiencing another person's words and assimilating his message, understanding another's message to help me find myself. I felt so compelled by the genre-bending album and its use of instruments to embellish and convey a message from Namjoon's words. I like the production choices so much. I like how the saxophone and the bass interacted with each other throughout the piece. And I felt so moved by how all of the instruments accompanied the melody or disrupted it, from the art direction to the concept photos and the lyrics. The album was wrapped with so much care and love in a deeply heartbreaking emotional journey. I cannot even begin to express how sad I felt and I feel for Namjoon's uneasy feelings on the album. To me, it was the voice of an artist that felt so broken by his status that he needed to leave that behind and find himself over again. It was full of self-loathing and horror, and that horror held like the tension with this loving, caring Namjoon. He is so committed to art and beauty that he could not help himself but to write so beautifully about nihilism, about the haters, about hating the haters, about getting lost and not finding himself right away. To me, Namjoon had written a helpless love letter to himself about dissonance, broken expectations, the fame monster, how he could find himself in all of that chaos. A year later, I still appreciate the album for making me feel so compelled by its ugly feelings and angst and anger and the beauty of the words spoken by Namjoon, that it helped me navigate and decipher who he was and at the same time finding myself. But as I sat with the album more and as I continue to think on all of the albums that were released during this chapter 2, I sort of felt even more heartbroken. Why did I have to hear such a painful album from Namjoon for me to feel compelled by his art so much? Was I also exploiting his own vulnerability? And what role should be my role as a fan of Namjoon and the other 6 members? I do not wish for them to suffer in order for me to feel compelled by the art. I have been so critical about the consumption of art by these algorithms that have degraded the experience to mere content in this voracious, incessant anger to consume so much to make more money. Had I myself unintentionally become this voracious consumer of BTS? What I mean to say is, in admiring Namjoon and the other 6 members of BTS, what I also losing their humanity. I recently saw Sinners, and anyone who knows me, I love vampire movies. As I watched the movie, this thought of this voraciousness of consumption of a favorite artist kept popping back up in my mind. Was I consuming Namjoon's pain in this vampiric way, that I needed to consume his genius art, that I needed to feel connected to his pain by this voracious need to suck the living life out of him? These were really unsettling thoughts. I did not want to reduce my experience of 7 artists to a transactional experience like the one of consumption. But I'm also conscious that I do have these other like mental health disorders. It always pulls me under. And there's this tension with the love that I feel for BTS and the emptiness, this hollow emptiness, right? I needed to explore those feelings even more and examine my own experience as a fan. And part of that personal deconstruction meant that I had to go back and reevaluate the albums and see them how they are and not how they impacted me. Listen to them without like consuming them. What could I hear now that I didn't hear before? A year ago, I found a deeply broken Namjoon who was trapped in this tension of his seemingly contradicting personas, his public persona versus his internal artistic self. And the album explored that tension with an intricate genre-bending narrative of a man being lost and eventually finding himself in that wandering road. This was a coming-of-age story about taking the wrong path and finding yourself lost in a Alice in Wonderland-esque world of fame. A year later, I was intrigued by this wrong path that leads you to being lost. So I went back to that infamous Festa dinner, and Namjoon had already mentioned there that he was feeling lost. I don't think this was up for discussion. Thinking again of this wrong path, I thought, well, what if he is trying to express that this wrong path was the one he was before? The Alice in Wonderland place, where cats on trees can disappear into haunting smiles, and a bunny is always running late to get to a very important date. What if that wrong place was the place he was before? And that idea got me thinking of the concept of the retreat, of taking a step back. In Buddhism, it's renunciation. For Marcus Aurelius, the mind needs to retreat inwards to renew oneself. What if I kept that in mind while I explore this album again? Like it was an album of Namjoon's retreat. We all know as fans that the military was a pause that needed to happen, but it was a forced pause. It was external forces that made it so that men from South Korea had to serve in the military. But on the Festa dinner, them announcing the chapter 2, this temporary break, that was done before. It wasn't forced. They needed it, and they needed it to find each other. Like they were already lost. And the military wouldn't be a place that you could find yourself. You needed to do that before you went to the military, to take a break, to truly be free, to discover who you are now, 10 years after the start of your career. Jun said, I realized the group has definitely changed. We have to accept that we've changed. For me, it was like the group BTS was within my grasp until On and Dynamite. But after Butter and Permission to Dance, I didn't know what kind of group we were anymore. Whenever I write lyrics and songs, it's really important what kind of story and message I want to give out. But it was like that was gone. I don't know what kind of story I should tell now. I've always thought that BTS was different from other groups, but the problem with Kpop and the idol system is that they don't give you time to mature. There is no time left for growth, and it's not just about music and work. I've changed as a human over the past 10 years, so I needed to think and have some time alone, and then those thoughts can mature into something uniquely mine. There's something I wanted to do in this world, and right now, when we are at best, I feel like I should be contributing something to the world, but I don't know what it is, and I still have to keep working. There's just no time for me to think. On my reevaluation journey, and in an effort to feel like I'm not this insatiable vampire that just simply wants to consume Namjoon's pain, I set myself to rediscover the album that I love so much and have a sort of second listening devoid of this consumption and transactional aspect. So these are some of the thoughts that I had. On Right People or Wrong Place, I still find this unsettling feeling that I had said I found before. But in this context, why was Namjoon playing with the concept of right and wrong? And the repeated refrain, I hear it almost like a prayer, or maybe a man in an asylum repeating and looping that sentiment over and over and over again, as if voicing it would bring something out. The line, feeling high on a forest fire, is a powerful image. And when you think of flames, usually they grow by consuming oxygen, right? What if Namjoon was expressing this like lack of air that one can experience from oxygen deprivation was making him feel this high inside that forest fire? Like that experience of this all-consuming force, like a fire is, that is depriving you from your own oxygen because the fire is consuming the oxygen, and that making Namjoon feel like euphoric. How broken is that, right? So I feel that is the opening of the introduction of the journey that I had seen Namjoon gone through before, of being lost, but how that loss and that chaos can also make you feel like a high. You're high. You're on top of the world. You're the king of the world. And yet, being on top of the world and having this high, you still have this distorted experience of a fire. Like he is trying to repeat himself into clarity. Right people, wrong place, right people, wrong place, to find clarity. Why would you believe that there is a bunny on a waistcoat holding a watch telling you that they're running out of time? That just does not make sense. And yet, there's something euphoric about that idea. Then on Knots, its trippiness makes me think of finding the wrong place to get lost at. Like Namjoon needed to step back from a place that was not serving his purpose of finding himself. I think getting lost in another person's love or in sexual desires or through drugs or alcohol, sure, it's a way to get lost, I have, but is that what Namjoon wanted out of the break? I feel Nuts was him exploring that. Is that the break that he needed? For Out of Love, I had said before, quote, it reiterates previous statements of there being a thin line between love and hate. But I always interpreted it as Namjoon talking about his haters. Rereading it today, I got stuck on the words, it's been months since I saw you. Do you believe me? I am not familiar with you. I love it when you hate me. No, kiss me. Oh, see me. Don't leave me. Just eat me. Wow. Like Namjoon himself feels intoxicated with this attention of the hater. Like in some twisted way, he also felt the need to be consumed with the hate of his haters. Linking back to that vampiric consumption, his haters were doing that. They were having this vampiric consumption of him. Even if I had consumed his words with love, unlike his haters, both of us were consuming Namjoon. We were all consuming him and taking this energy out of him, making him feel out of love. And yet, he himself says, don't leave me, just eat me. Why? Like, there's this twisted feeling of, like, rather the devil you know than the devil you don't know. On Domodachi, it's like he found a way to not let him be consumed by it, to no longer be dictated. Like, who he is not longer dictated by that hate. Of Question Mark Interlude, I felt like it was a conversation with himself. Like he's laying to rest his old self. There's this deep hatred to his words. Would it be better if I didn't know you? It is literally like digging a grave for a man who was so constrained by these social pressures. And I find that Question Mark Interlude is that like resting place of the journey when he finally puts that person to rest. I still sort of feel the same about Groin as I did before. He just needed to verbalize the hate. This is something that is not often discussed about. Thinking within the past year, where we saw many articles of the revival of the hater persona, that occurred when Kendrick Lamar made it cool to be a hater again, I feel this is what Namjoon needed. Like how Kendrick needed to write 5 songs about the deep disdain that he held for Drake, I felt that Namjoon needed to hate on the haters on Groin. Namjoon needed to go there and say, yes, you're all bitches, and no, I'm not a diplomat. Don't hang these big words on my back. At the end, he says, I'll set you free. That line just strikes me as a double-edged meaning, that he himself is setting himself free by freeing his haters. And he freed them by hating on them. Like saying, yeah, you walk like a dog, bitch. And like, you just keep, like, everything I do is wrong. He was giving them what the gay haters needed to move on. He was finally showing how broken he felt and was talking about it. And it was actually very powerful. Like, reivindicating. I still feel the same way about Heaven. See how he slowly is releasing the pressure the world had put on his back. The line, go grab your knife and watch me collapse, is a very dramatic scene. Like when Brutus took a knife to Caesar and killed him. And yet, for Brutus, he was given the knife by the senators who hated Caesar. Here, Namjoon handed the knife to the haters himself. It's like he was recruiting the haters for them to excise this cancerous mass inside of him that he did not need. And that part of him was the expectations on him as the leader of Bangtan, as a public figure, as a good person, or as a person who needed to be followed like an idol. On Lost Around the World, You, I still feel the same as I had before. To me, those are songs about finding himself after finally giving into the hate. It's about finding peace amongst the hate and feeling gratitude to the people he loves. And as a fan, I want Namjoon and the 7 members as a whole to find happiness despite the hate. I hope they have found themselves in this journey. It breaks my heart that they needed to feel like they had to run and run and run and run in order to survive and in order to meet the fans' needs. Like, why did they have to do that? On these 3 songs, I find that Namjoon has rid himself of that burden in a way. For Come Back to Me, it makes me go back to Namjoon's last words during the Festa dinner. At that point, he started talking about the multiverse and how there is this concept that arises from physics and specifically from quantum physics about the multiverse, that there could be many universes and many of them. You could find a Namjoon who was an office worker. You could find a Namjoon who was a family father, who had a girlfriend, who had a daughter, but that he is right now in the best world possible, and that is a world where he is RM of BTS. And in order to do that, he said he needed to take a break. He needed to renounce his status. He needed to leave the home that he had built and that had built him a home of fortune, a home of gratitude, and he needed to leave that to find himself again. On Come Back to Me, he says, now I can see what life is about. After taking a break and getting lost, he found the meaning for what he was looking for. He said, I see you come back to me. You are my pain, divine. Many philosophers throughout history, from east to west, have talked about the need to embrace pain. Like, pain is something we need to accept, not something we need to avoid. It is not something to be feared or escaped, but embrace. What Namjoon seems to be saying in Come Back to Me is that he needed to see pain not as an attack, but as something that happens. Schopenhauer felt the world was encompassed by an all-powerful force called will that dictated our lives, and that we were not able to change the course of our own self, and that our own desires, if they went against what will dictates, that makes us suffer. Schopenhauer's response to that is that to such a grim world that is opposed to our own desires, the only way that we are able to prevent misery is by accepting the fate we are under. Like, accepting the pain we're under throughout our whole life is just an inherent part of being. And the only way to reduce pain is to accept the pain itself. To me, Come Back to Me is Namjoon finding himself back to who he is and to who he wanted to be, RM of BTS. And he accepts that the person he is someone who will face pain. But that pain is not something to be suffered. It's something divine. It's a cycle that he will spend his whole life living through, trying to find himself in the group that completes him and yet losing himself to the group and getting lost and trying to find his way back to himself that is part of a group. You know, that is a cycle that seems divine. It's fated. There's this pain in it that you just have to accept. Anyways, I don't know if I'm correct with my interpretation. This is just my thoughts after revisiting the project a year later. And when they come back, I hope that I have renounced myself, that desire of like vampiric consumption of them. And I hope I can find a way to relate to them that is not purely transactional. Maybe if I try to work on myself and feel the whole for myself, if I find my own value and accept my failures for what they are, something painful but divine, like a cycle that repeats itself, that makes it feel like failure and the painful problems of life are not who I am. It's not that I'm meant or fated to be a failure, but it's something that will inevitably find me and I can inevitably let go of. I can let it happen. I can leave behind. And I hope if I do that, that I don't see BTS as this group that just feels my own emptiness. Rather, we all find our all full sense of self, and then we can come back to each other and share, like sharing the happiness and sadness. It's more of enriching each other. That is how I revisited this album that I really love so much. Anyways, what about you? What have you learned about yourself in this chapter 2? I don't know. Let me know. If you stayed all the way until the end, thank you. Please subscribe. It means the world to me. I talk about BTS and art and the politics of art and economics and whatever the heck I feel like. So yeah. Until next time, remember to be excellent to one another. Bye.